You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, season 2, episode 75. R.I.P. Cubs 2023. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow the socials. Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, Fly the W on Facebook. Of course, you can email us at flythew670@gmail.com. Crawly, I'd ask you how you're doing, but I can only imagine how you're doing. The season has come to an end, and the Cubs are not playing meaningful baseball beyond October 1st.
The worst part is this morning I checked, and the postseason tickets were still in my phone. So just to kind of tease me, it's like, here are the tickets you're not going to use. So
right, a little salt in the wounds, eh?
You know, it's hard, Dustin. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you know, how much of ourselves we put into this team. You know, it's you know, you and I are doing podcasts. We're on social media. You're talking about it every day. I'm talking about it every day. You know, you put your heart and soul in this, and to be so close. I mean, 161 games before the Cubs were eliminated. Just mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. They did more, and we're going to get to it. I just quickly though, I think they did more than we could have expected. If you would have said that they would be where they finished record-wise, I think you'd feel pretty good. I wonder, like, did you write this down? Did we write this down? I'm sure we could find it. Any idea how close either one of us were to what our original predictions were for this season?
I had the Cubs winning 84 games.
Well, you were pretty close. You were pretty close then.
Yeah, I was like, you couldn't just win one more game and make me look real smart. No, yeah.
Where was I? Any idea where I was?
I got to double check, man. I just know I was 83 because I put it on I put 84 games. I thought 84 was about right, and I thought they'd have a chance at the wild card. So,
yep.
You know, it was like you said, it was close but no cigar, and like you said, yeah, you know, it's to be able to sit there and say to yourself, hey, man, we played meaningful baseball all the way through, essentially a whole season of baseball. You know, when you think about, like, you know, how bad they've been the last couple of years, not saying I want it. You know, I mean, obviously that never should have happened, but it was a lot more fun to actually have baseball to care about than to not, you know?
Yep, absolutely. That's the way you have to look at it. That's the only way it'll get you through now until spring training. So let's recap it for everybody. Let's recap the Brewers series. Started Friday night, Kyle Hendricks on the hill.
Yeah, Kyle Hendricks versus Colin Rea. Even though the Cubs wouldn't be mathematically eliminated until Saturday night, this was the game where the Cubs season ended, right? We got the news that we expected. Closer Edward Alzolay coming off the IL, and he's able to help the bullpen, and Keegan Thompson was optioned. But in a series where the Cubs needed to sweep, the offense came out and just gave another listless performance. You know, they scored runs at least against Atlanta, but this was just bad on Friday night. Against Colin Rea, a guy who's been up and down to AAA all season, Cubs couldn't do a damn thing. Rea went 5.2 innings. He gave up no runs on 2 hits. Through 7 innings, Dustin, the Cubs only had 4 base runners. A Morel double in the 3rd, a Seiya single in the 5th, Tauchman single in the 6th, and a Seiya Suzuki walk in the 7th. So 7 innings, the Cubs do nothing, right?
Yeah.
And then Hendricks took the mound for what could be the last time in a Cubs uni. Wasn't the greatest outing for Kyle, as he wasn't able to go deep into the game, and there was a lot of traffic on the bases. Just to show how bad the Cubs' defensive yips have gotten lately, even the sure-handed Kyle Hendricks misplayed a ball in the 3rd, but at least it didn't cost him a run. He ran into a little trouble in the 4th, but was able to wiggle out of it, but not so lucky in the 5th. Victor Garrettini, whose goal is to punish the Cubs every time he faces them for trading them, leads off the inning with a single. Bryce Terang would hit a swinging bunt to put 2 on, and Hendricks walked Yelich to load the bases with no outs. With William Contreras up to bat, Hendricks got him to hit one up the middle. Looked like a surefire double play, but Nico bobbled it. They were only able to get 1 out at second. Victor Caratini scored. The Brewers were up 1-0, but you know, that run was going to score anyway, but that would have been 2 outs, right?
Right.
And so, you know, it just ended up costing you at least 1 run, because the next batter, Carlos Santana, made the Cubs pay by hitting a triple, and the Cubs were now down 3-0. That would be it for Hendricks. Julian Merriweather would come into the game to finish the inning. Final numbers on Kyle were 4.1 innings. He gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, 3 walks, and 2 Ks. So
really early to be going to Julian Merriweather. You can tell how much the Cubs really were trying to stay in this one.
Yeah, you know, like I said, this was really it for these guys. And so, you know, I thought that, Ross did go early, but it was absolutely 100% necessary. And so after pitching 5 innings of shutout ball, Bryce Wilson came in to replace Colin Ray. He pitched 1 inning of shutout ball, but in the 7th, the Brewers were done playing. They figured game's over. We don't care anymore. They're not going to put any of their top relievers in. The first guy out in the 8th, in the 7th, Clayton Andrews is out there. He has been in the minor leagues all season. He pitched in 2 games in July before being sent back to the minors. He pitched on September 5th and was immediately optioned. And then he came into this game with an ERA, Dustin, of 27. He worked, like the Brewers are like, we don't care anymore. Do whatever you got to do. He works a scoreless inning. He strikes out Happ. He gets Bellinger to fly out. He walks Seiya and gets Dansby to ground out. He comes back out in the 8th, and Jaime Candelario greets him with a home run to make it 3-1. The next batter, Christopher Morel, triples, and Yan Gomes grounds out to score Morel and make it 3-2. You're now back at the top of the order, Dustin. You got 1 out. You're down 1 run against a guy with an ERA of 27. But with only 1 out, Mike Tauchman would strike out. And then David Ross would pinch hit Miles Mastrobuoni, who came into the game when Nico fouled the pitch off his kneecap. Patrick Wisdom came in. Craig Counsell is going to counter with a 30-year-old minor leaguer making his MLB debut, Caleb Bougely. With Bougely on the mound, he is so unknown that they didn't even have a picture from him on his MLB page. It's just a silhouette. But with Caleb Bougely on the mound, Wisdom would strike out to end the inning. But wait, Craig Counsell would roll the dice with Bougely again with a 1-run lead.
I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe he was bringing him back out.
Right. He had one-run lead in the 9th, and he brings him back out. Ian Happ greets him with a leadoff home run. We got a tie game. No outs. But Bougely would then get Bellinger to ground out, struck out Seiya Suzuki and Dansby. And so we are going into extras, right? But before that, in the bottom of the 9th, Ross hands the ball to Mark Leiter, who can no longer throw his out pitch, the split finger. He gives up a single to Victor Caratini before getting Bryce Terang to ground into a double play. He would walk Christian Yelich. Ross had seen enough. The ball, Dustin, I'm watching, and it is just floating up there like a little frisbee, and I'm waiting for one of these guys to pound it. It looked like a position pitcher pitching. You know what I mean? It was just awful. And so Jose Cuas would come in and get William Contreras to ground out to go into extra innings. Counsell says, why not? Bougely 1 more time. Swanson starts at second. Jaime Candelario would line out. Christopher Morel would walk. And Dansby would advance to third on a wild pitch. So you have runners at first and third, 1 out. Yan Gomes, who struggled all games, struck out. Morel would steal second. You now have runners at second and third with 2 outs. And Counsell calls on Bougely to intentionally walk Mike Tauchman to load the bases to get to Patrick Wisdom. That's what Counsell thinks of Wisdom. Smart move. Wisdom would strike out swinging. The Cubs would then be, going to the bottom of the 10th with Contreras on second. They would pinch run for him. Carlos Santana would double it off. The Cubs would lose 4-3 in the 10th. Caleb Bougely gets the win. Dustin, the Cubs offense scored 3 runs on 6 hits. They would go 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position and leave 6 men on base. Horner, Bellinger, Swanson, Gomes, half-year lineup, all hitless.
Yeah, you're not going to win many games when that happens. It was almost like the Brewers were saying, "Go ahead and win this one. Go ahead. We're working on things here. We're working on some things. We're not giving you any of our relievers." So those are the situations when you get really frustrated, right? Because they were trying to let you win that game, and you still couldn't win that game.
They put in 1 good pitcher. They had Colin Rea, like I said, who's a swing man. And then they had Bryce Wilson, who normally comes into the game. And then after that, like you said, they're, okay, we don't care anymore. We'll just put in Bougely and, we'll put in this other guy with an ERA of 27. It's just Clayton Andrews. Like, seriously, they didn't care, and you still couldn't win.
Right. So at this point now, the Marlins are taking care of their own business down in Pittsburgh. So
they lost Friday. So you were still in it Saturday.
So you're still technically in it, but the doomsday number, Crawly, at this point is 1, right? So any combination of a Marlin win or a Cubs loss on Saturday would doom them, and they were kind of going – games basically got started right around the same time Saturday.
Right. Jordan Wicks taking on Eric Lauer. After having a 92% chance after sweeping the Giants on September 6th, the Cubs had a 2% chance and in desperate need of a miracle. Like you said, you needed the Marlins to lose their 2, the Cubs to win 2, and the Marlins to lose that extra inning game where they would
that would have been today.
Right. It would have been a half an inning today. The Cubs jumped on Eric Lauer early. Christopher Morel leadoff home run. Seiya happened. Swanson would walk, and then Yan Gomes would hit a grand slam to put the Cubs up 5-0.
Where was this a night ago? Where was this a night ago?
Not there, unfortunately. Heimer Candelario would strike out before Wisdom hit a solo home run. Again, where was that the night before? And they're up 6-0 after 1 inning. Unfortunately, Jordan Wicks had the worst start of his major league career. He would load the bases, although Patrick Wisdom made an error on a missed catch that would have retired Carlos Santana. So bases loaded, no outs. Willie Adames doubled, and the Brewers trailed 6-2. Tyrone Taylor's would ground out to score Santana, and the Brewers had cut their lead in half to 6-3. After the Cubs did nothing in their half of the second, Andrew Monasterio singled and Blake Perkins homered to make it a 6-5 game. A few batters later, Carlos Santana homered, and the game was tied. Only took 2 innings, Dustin, for the Cubs to piss away a 6-0 lead.
That was amazing. Absolutely, absolutely amazing. I thought, all right, here we go. Statement game. Okay, we're not done until everybody says we're done. And boy, Jordan Wicks was out already.
Right, he wasn't able to make it out of the second. He went 1.2 innings. He gave up 6 runs on 6 hits, 2 Ks, and 1 walk. The Cubs retook the lead in the 4th. Alexander Canario was found on the side of a milk carton. He singled, and Christopher Morel doubled, but a bad send by Willie Harris as the Brewers executed the cutoff and relay to perfection, and Canario was easily out at the plate. Seiya would single to put runners at the corners, and Ian Happ would hit an RBI single to make it 7-6. Cody Bellinger would double to score Happ and make it 8-6 and put runners at second and third with 1 out. But Dansby hit one to third, and Ian Happ was gunned down at home plate, and Yan Gomes lined out to end the threat. And we saw this all throughout the Atlanta series and pretty much this whole month, where you just had a bunch of runners on base and you couldn't get the big hit.
Right.
The Cubs would add another run in the 5th when Heimer Candelario doubled. Wisdom would strike out, but Canario would triple the score. Candelario and the Cubs led by a score of 9-6. Runner on third, 1 out. Morel strikes out and Suzuki flies out to end that threat. And then the Cubs would score one more time when Ian Happ would double to lead off the next inning. Cody Bellinger and Dansby would walk to load the bases with no outs. Yan Gomes would ground out to score Happ and make it 10-6. But with runners at second and third and 1 out, Candelario would strike out and Patrick Wisdom would fly out. Bases loaded, no outs. He scored only 1 run. That was 3 innings in a row, Dustin, where the Cubs had a runner at third and 1 out and could not score the runner. Unreal.
Yeah, I mean, and again, the Cubs scored a ton of runs this year. Ton of runs. But sometimes they scored runs when they didn't need to instead of scoring runs when they did need to. It's not about scoring. It's about when you score.
Right. And the bullpen did well after Wicks struggled. He should, the bullpen shut down the Brewers for 6 1/3 innings. Wisniewski went 1.2. Assad looked really good in his 1.2 innings. And Tyone went 4 innings to keep the Brewers off the board. The Cubs would win this one 10-6. The offense scored 10 runs on 13 hits, but went 5 for 5 with 15 with runners in scoring position. They left.
How about that, though? Tyone coming out of the bullpen.
First time in his career.
Right.
Unbelievable.
So again, it's just showing how much that particular game meant to the Cubs.
Exactly. Unfortunately, it didn't matter because in the top of the 8th, with the Cubs batting, the Marlins beat the Pirates 73, officially eliminating the Cubs from playoff contention. And then that just takes us to Game 3, which was just a throwaway game. Drew Smiley versus Adrian Howard.
What was that? A throwaway game? Wow, that's kind of like it was almost spring training-ish, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the Cubs made a flurry of moves, and we knew this was going to happen if this was the case. Steele was done. He wasn't starting. Drew Smiley would get the ball. Hayden Wisniewski and Jordan Wicks were optioned, and Shane Green and Tyler Duffy were called up. Fulmer and Magical were put on the 60-day IL to make room for Green and Duffy on the 40-man. Nico went on the 10-day IL. Jared Young came up. So Ross's lineup was filled with rookies and guys that probably won't be on the team next year. PCA led off, Morel at short, Candelario DH, Canario and right, Talkman in left, Wisdom at third, Young at first, Amaya catching, and Mastroboni at second. And you know what, Dustin? It started out somewhat promising, but
somewhat short-lived.
Yeah, not for Drew Smyly. He gets the start, and it went as well as most of his starts did after the month of May. He gave up a walk and a single to the first two batters. Got Carlos Santana to pop out, but Mark Hanna singled to put the Brewers up 1-0. He walked Willy Adames to load the bases, and then walked in a run to make it 2-0. Ross had seen enough. Smyly recorded 1 out, gave up 3 runs on 2 hits and 3 walks with no strikeouts. Luke Little came into the game and gave up a
Talk
sac
about the
fly.
side of a milk carton, Crawly.
But he was able to get out of the inning with the Cubs down, 3-0 only. Daniel Palencia pitched 2 innings of shutout ball. Tyler Duffy pitched 2 innings, gave up a solo home run. And Shane Green pitched 2 innings of shutout ball. The Cubs were able to load the bases in the beginning of the game, the first inning with 2 outs against Adrian Hauser, but Hauser struck out Wisdom to end the threat, and that was the only threat the Cubs offense had all game. Wisdom had a 2-out single in the 4th, PCA with a 2-out walk and a stolen base in the 5th. Mike Talkman had a 2-out double in the 6th, and Morel with a 2-out single in the 8th. After the first inning, Dustin, the Cubs would never have 2 runners on base in the same inning the rest of the game and were shut out. Their season ended with a guy named Jansen Junk striking out the side. The Cubs offense scored 0 runs on 5 hits, went 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position, and left 7 men on base. In the end, Dustin, the team just collapsed. They were 10 games under 500, but fought back to 12 games over 500. An amazing swing. But all that fight left them out of gas when it came to the final month of the season. The bullpen was trash. The offense looked tired. And the defense was uncharacteristically bad. They actually took some audio of the players after that big loss on Friday, and after Saturday when they were officially eliminated. And here was a little clip of what some of the guys had to say.
We didn't play our best ball towards the end. We one of the hottest teams in the middle of the year. We gave it our all. We gave it a chance to be in that situation. We climbed from a big hole in the beginning of the year. So we got to take the silver lining and understand that there's a lot of positives that go into this year, but it's for sure going to be a little bit of a sour note right now, knowing that our hopes are done.
We all wanted and expected to be in the postseason. That's what we strive for in spring training. We thought we had the group. And we had a great team. We were playing unbelievable baseball in July to even put us in this situation. We fought till the very end. Obviously, the last few weeks was more on the frustrating side than any of us wanted to be. They know I enjoyed it. I think that they enjoyed it as well. Just thankful for the opportunity. Was glad I had the opportunity to go in January once I signed and kind of get rolling with these guys and the hitting coaches and getting familiar with everyone. So it was successful.
I was just thinking this would be a really fun team to compete with in the playoffs and pop champagne with. This is a great group. Probably the most challenging year of my career, and just showing up every day was so much fun here. When you're out of it in September, there's less pressure. Maybe you can rest guys. So I think it's probably a lesson throughout the entire roster. Condition as well as you can and stay locked in for every single game.
All the everyday guys, I guarantee, feel like there was several moments that we individually could have swung things one way or another with a big hit or a big play in any of those series that we lost, and that part really does stick with you and stings. I feel really strong about our relationships as people and just how consistent the group was. I think it makes playing every day so much easier when you have guys beside you that don't complain, show up, bring their best every day regardless, and it kind of just becomes the standard, and I think that's going to be true here for a really long time.
So in that group there, you had Jan Gomes, you had Cody Bellinger, you had Jamison Tyone and Nico Horner. And you could hear, man, they did not want this group to be sold. They did not want it to be broken up. And they fought like hell to stay together and to keep this team together with the hopes they believed to make the playoffs. We all did. And to fall short is hard, man. And you don't know what next year holds, but you hope that they learned some lessons from it and got some valuable experience. And like I said, there was a lot of things that we will definitely have plenty of time in the offseason to do a real deep autopsy here. But, there's a lot of frustration, and those guys wanted to win badly.
Yes, they did. They definitely wanted to win badly. I think this was a good thing, right? I think this should work out. This should propel them to next year. There was some really valuable wins and there was some really valuable losses. So I have good feelings about how things went overall. I don't have good feelings about how it ended, but if you sit back and you look at it in totality, I think this was a very helpful season. Now, if as we go through things and as we pick them apart slowly but surely, and it doesn't pan out, then it'll be really disappointing that they didn't get here. But I think this is a building block, Crawly.
I was listening to you guys on the Mully and Haw show in the morning, as I always do, on 670 The Score, and I think it was you who said that it's a building block if they're successful next year. If not, right. It makes it more of a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. But if it ends up working out and they not only make it, but they're in the position where they're setting up their rotation, where they're giving guys off, the last couple of series, things like that. They're getting things lined up. Guys like PCA have figured out how to run the bases. The bullpen is not completely burned out because, again, part of the reason they were able to get to this point is because the bullpen was so good, but they used the heck out of them. I mean, they didn't have somebody to replace Michael Fulmer. They didn't have somebody to replace Alzolay when those two guys went down relatively the same amount of time. So there's a lot of things to work on. But again, I get that you're upset right this second, but sit back, relax, and let's enjoy the offseason. And let's see what happens, okay? Let's see what happens before we blow our tops, because I know, Crawly, you and I will be front and center ready to blow our tops, but we do owe this group an opportunity to improve and grow. Absolutely. This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2. It's episode 75. Rest in peace, Cubs 2023. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. In this segment, we hear the second half of Crawly's interview with Smokies announcer Mick Gillispie talking about the Southern League Championship Series.
As the Smokies clinched that one 5-1, the Pensacola Blue Wahoos beat the Montgomery Biscuits to advance to the finals. So you get a rematch of last year's championship. How badly do you think the team wanted to face the Blue Wahoos? I know there's some guys that weren't there the year before, but obviously, there were some players, and then you guys that work for the Smokies. I mean, you had to have been kind of itching to get to this matchup.
Well, I guess if we would have lost, I would have rather played the Biscuits. But the truth is both of those teams have given us trouble. We for whatever reason, we have historically struggled against Montgomery, which is the Tampa Bay AA club. And then I mentioned before, I highlighted, we lost a lot of championships, 3 of them, to Jacksonville and now Pensacola, the Marlins AA affiliate. And you want to beat the best. It means a lot more when they're the defending champs. They won last year and they had a lot of their team back. We had an entirely different roster, except for a few people here and there. But I mean, for the most part, like all the position players were different. All the starting pitching for the most part was different in the bullpen. There was some guys in the bullpen, like Blake Whitney. And, you mentioned Andy Weber, who was injured last year for part of the season. But it was great. It just was, beating them meant a lot, just because if you're going to pick the opponent, you kind of want to beat the people that beat you. You want them to experience that same disappointment. So we both got one. They got last year and we got this year. Next year will be the rubber match. And I hope we win that one too, right?
Absolutely. And Brandon Birdsell, he was the 5th round draft pick from last year. He gets the ball for game 1 in Tennessee. Free beer night again, because why mess with something, right? You don't want to jinx anything. So you keep that going. He goes 5 innings. He gives up 1 run. If he hadn't given up that run in the 3rd, that would have been a lot of drinking that night, because, they didn't score it really, pretty much the whole rest of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great game. I'll tell you what I loved is that the Smokies just smashed them. It was like an 8-1 game by the time the latter innings, I call them the business end innings, the 8th and the 9th came around. But he was great, and what happened is in these playoffs, and you see it in the big leagues too, is that you pitch your ace first and then your second guy second. And sometimes you may pitch it depending on the rest and, and all that stuff, maybe it's reversed or whatever. But we both swept, they swept and we swept. So we both started the game, the guy that was scheduled for game 3.
Right.
And so that was Birdsell for us and Fitterer for them. And Birdsell just has always thrown strikes, you know, and his trouble comes from giving up home runs and hits, you know, because he throws so many strikes. But he did a really good job of first time around. He gets a lot of outs because you're kind of just feeling him out. You're going to take some strikes. Well, then when they started to adjust, he started to adjust, and he started to change what he was throwing, you know, instead of just a get-ahead fastball, and he started to mix it up. So he had a great game. And then the Smokies bats just pounded them and started with B.J. Murray. Murray was a factor in every game that the Smokies played, whether it be, you know, yesterday's game or the game before that, in the field, at the plate, taking pitches. He elevated his game. He showed me something, you know, like I don't know, you watch people play every day and you're trying to figure out like what makes someone a good player and you know what their potential is. I think that what Murray has working for him is he's got this great eye. And I think as the umpiring gets better, and then eventually when we end up with automated strike zones, guys like him are going to do well because they're not forced to swing at pitches that aren't strikes. And then when he took a chance, he hit the ball hard.
Right. And like you said, the offense just comes out. They scored 2 in the first, 1 in the second, and then 5 in the third. You got an 8-1 ball game after 3. And you know, not saying it's over, but that's a real difficult, you know, task to come back from. And what blew me away on this one, Mick, is nearly every hitter in that game had an RBI. You're talking B.J. Murray, Hayden McCreary, Pablo Aliendo, Ezekiel Pagan, Kevin Alcantara, Andy Weber. They all drove in runs. And Hayden McCreary is a guy that I saw him in, was he in Myrtle Beach? No, he wasn't in Myrtle Beach. He was in South Bend. But tell me a little bit about Hayden from what you got to see from him.
Well, when he showed up in the beginning of the season, he didn't break camp with us. We had Bryce Ball, and Bryce was struggling. And there were like all these different guys playing first base at the beginning of the year. It was weird. It was like a merry-go-round over there, you know, where the year before it was Bryce Ball every day. And then this time it was like, well, Bryce Ball. And then, you know, it could be Nelson Maldonado. It could be Miguel Amaya. I mean, it was just all these different guys playing first. And you got the feeling that they didn't really, they weren't in love with Ball, who they ended up releasing. And then McGarry shows up and he's a catcher, but they're going to play him at first base. And he was the worst defensive first baseman I've ever seen. And at first I didn't know he was a catcher. I'm watching him play first base and I'm like, wow, this is terrible. You know, like, what are we doing here? But then he gets to the plate and he's just, okay. You're like, all right. Yeah. I mean, the guy, when he makes contact, he just kills it. You know, he's got this long reach and, you know, definitely an elevated swing, and he can do a lot of damage. But the guy was in college last year, like a small college too. It wasn't like he's playing at, you know, a major Division I, you know, like Michigan or, you know, Indiana or something like that. I mean, he's playing in this little school in Colorado, but you saw it, like he was like the Ted Williams of that league, right? And so as the season progressed, he got a lot better at first. Still got a lot of work to do, and I hope he puts the work in because the bat's going to play. And so he's just, you know, he hits the ball with such, you know, with such momentum that it just does things for him, you know. And that's what look, the analytics guys are going to love him, you know, because the exit velo, you know, and basically what that means when you hear exit velo is just the harder the ball's hit, the more difficult it is to play because it's harder to figure out what the ball's going to do, you know.
Right.
So if it hits the ground, you know, it may go this way or it may go this way, but your reaction time's cut back because you don't have enough time to think about it. So that's kind of his superpower. And you know, he played all the time. Like they hardly took him out of the lineup, and I think that's good. I don't know that the Smokies are the team that they were without him. He's really important.
an under the radar kind of guy. You know what I mean? He's not the big name that everybody thinks of when you're thinking of all the top prospects in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And winning that big game 1. Now you got game 2. You have a chance to win the championship in Pensacola. And there's no doubt who's getting the ball on this, that it's going to be Cade Horton. And man, he just did not disappoint yesterday, Mick.
We win game 1 and you get a day off to travel, and you need the day off. And we had heard that because it's an all turf field, last time we were there, Walker Powell slipped on the turf and hurt his leg or his ankle or something. So I was told, hey, there's a chance if it rains that Cade Horton's not going to pitch. Oh, and I just kept thinking well, if I'm the Cubs, I get that, right? I get that. But as a Smokies broadcaster that's been through all this stuff, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do here? So it was just our year. Yesterday, ironically, I live 45 minutes from Pensacola. And so this is really a home game. I work in Tennessee, but I live here. And I get a text from my wife, and she's like, this is I don't know, game starts at 6 Central. This is 5:30. It's pouring. It's pouring right now. So I look on the phone, and I'm like, if it rains, they're going to pull this guy. And all the Cubs people are there too, Yeah. So it wasn't they're going to sneak him out there. And so I'm like, if it rains and he can't pitch, what are we going to do? And but that didn't happen, so so thankful that didn't happen. And this is working out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, because Smokey struck first, but then the Blue Wahoos come right back and answer. But you talked about BJ Murray earlier. He hits a 3-run homer, and that puts it at 4-1. And then the rout begins. 1 in the 5th, 4 in the 6th, 1 in the 7th, and when I'm watching again that last call, we heard that at the beginning, at the top of the interview, and all of a sudden that ball comes. It got a little bit dicey. There's some bases loaded, towards the end, even though it was a big lead. Like you said, as a Cub fan, you're never happy until that final out is there. And all of a sudden, Matt Shaw just made that catch. It was such a relief, and to see everybody kind of pouring out of the field, that was just absolutely incredible.
It felt like a title fight. And the Smokies, this year's edition of the Smokies, were a young, up-and-coming, talented team. A lot of talent, a lot of big prospects, and no one that was there last year. And their team was experienced. They didn't have a lot of prospects, but they had a lot of guys that can play. They had guys, their shortstop hardly ever made mistakes, and he made an error in the game. The Smokies got ahead of them, and they started to feel that pressure, and they couldn't play with it. And that was the same exact thing that happened to the Smokies last year. The Smokies fell behind in game 3, and they just started making a bevy of mistakes. And that's, first off, that's why the minor leagues are so important, because if you want to win at the big league level, having gone through the experience of losing last year and then having gone through the experience of winning this year is going to help both sets of those guys. But this year's team, I heard Kevin Graber say this last night. He said everyone on the roster was wanting to win. He said, and that's him. That's me right there. And he's addressing, that's exactly when he said that. He was saying that as I was filming. We were broadcasting. I was just holding that mic so that our fans could hear it. But he had a team of guys that were all pulling in the same direction. And the game felt like this title fight, the young up and coming boxer against the veteran champion that knows how to box, and we're more big punchers, but we just got him. And that entire game after Murray hit the home run, it just felt like the Smokies kept taking big swings and getting close to a knockout. And then they had that 4-run 6th, and they were done. And even though you still worry about it, and I was relieved when it was finally over, it was really over when he hit that home run. Yeah, they weren't. Kevin Graber wasn't going to blow that game, and neither were those guys. They weren't going to let it happen. They wanted to win this thing so bad. And then there's one other thing that I got to tell you about. It's a people game. And I have said this, and I hope that your listeners will check out the Cubs baseball channel and my scout podcast with former Cubs scouting director Tim Wilkin, because the reason I started my channel and really that particular show is kind of like where we started. We do other stuff now. I love talking Cubs baseball just like you do. I can't wait to have you on my channel, son. But because we have fallen so in love at the organizational level with analytics that we forget that scouting is part of this. And we have diminished the role of scouting so much, and we rely too much on analytics, I feel like. And a great example of that has nothing to do with anything that analytics or anything else really could factor in. But we had a guy that has worked at our stadium for years, and he's definitely got a disability. I don't know what it is, but he's a great guy, and he shows up for work every day. And he looks like the guy named Cheddar Bob off of the Eminem movie, and that's his nickname. And so I know him because he will come in. If I see him, it's like, "Hey, Mick, I love the broadcast. I listen every time I'm on my smoke break," and and that's about all he says. But he's just there. You just get this positive energy. So he's a little guy. He's a little Cheddar Bob guy, and they didn't have enough bat boys. And so our clubhouse manager, a guy named Detrell, was like, "Hey, let's just get Cheddar Bob to be the emergency bat boy."
Right.
And that was 10 games ago, and we won every single game. He went on the road with us to Chattanooga. He went on the road with us to Pensacola. The guys made him get up and give a speech, which was very short. Both spots, they loved him. And I think you remember Cheddar Bob. But my point is that that's part of like the team, the fun. Joe Madden was the greatest at creating that. And we forget that sometimes too, that it's a human game.
Creating chemistry with each other, and that kind of stuff. And Mick, when they finally won that, I thought of you, and this is picture right here is you holding the trophy. You've been the lead broadcaster since 2007 for the Tennessee Smokies. You've won Broadcaster of the Year before. But, after a while, we all, when we're younger, think we're going to see championships galore and all that stuff. But, as you and I kind of get a little bit older, you start, especially when I remember with the Cubs, I'm starting like, am I going to see a World Series in my lifetime? And so for you, I'm sure it was a dream to be able to call a Smokies championship and to hold that trophy. And as at any point, like, did you have a chance to kind of just reflect over your career and that moment and think about how much that meant to you and I'm sure your family and everybody else?
Well, I got out there. They're like, "Hey, let's get a picture of the front office," because I had to get back up to finish the post-game show, and they handed it to me. And my goal every year was just to win the broadcast, to have a broadcast where people are like, "Man, I got to listen. I can't get out of the car. I love the story you told about this or what that meant." And you want to think that means everything, and it does mean a lot of it, right? You tune us in. If our broadcast is calling, the same players that are in Atlanta or Cincinnati or Chicago or wherever, we're just as good as anybody. The problem is that our best player, Pete Crow Armstrong, is on the way to AAA, and then he's in the big leagues, right? So to kind of answer your question, when you get to these moments, right? It's about the fans. It's their team. And you just don't want to F it up. You just don't want to mess it up for them And that to me was what this was all about. It wasn't about a champagne celebration. Yeah. Do I want a ring? Hell yeah. I mean, I'm happy. I'm getting one, right? Like, it's cool. But I've got a Cubs ring too. So it's nothing will ever trump that. I got a Cubs ring story if you want it. It's like a personal story, but sometimes it's weird how this stuff kind of, it's such a part of who you are as a person and your DNA. What it means to you to be around it, to be around great players and people. And, I got to tip my cap to Jared Banner to give us the guys to win this thing this year. Hung out with them after the game. I'm just so happy, right? But I'm happy for all of our fans. We have the best fans. It's like I call it Wrigley Field, the friendly confines South, Smoky Stadium. And then eventually we have a new one here coming up. But and then it happens, and it's like, okay, you're defined by those moments, like as a broadcaster, to nail those. So about the 8th inning, I'm like, what the hell am I going to say? Like, what am I going to say here, right? Because there's a lot more to it than just, hey, the team won. You get these opportunities, and you just want to make sure that they turn out the way that when the players listen to it, the fans listen to it, they're like, hey, this really sounds like that. And I was trying to just like, the nickname for the team, by the way, was the Chokies. I mean, we were the Chokies. Just like when I saw Tom Ricketts after the Cubs won the World Series, I'm not going to tell you exactly what he said, but it had something to do with not being the lovable losers anymore. And I think Tom's great. I love him, and I loved it when I saw him and he said that, because I get it. Been a Cubs fan, the Chokies, that's the worst nickname that was true up until yesterday ever. So, the people that have been around for a long time, the fans and stuff, they're texting me. Our public address announcer was there in '78. There's a handful of people that were there at Bill Meyer the last time they won, and that's it. I mean, it's been a long, long time. So that's what I was trying to do, to get all of that into the call.
Mick, my only hope, and I know that my timing's never good with this stuff, but the Cubs always do the ring presentation in Mesa. So just make sure you get a good base stand going, and I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you get that ring, and I'm sure it's going to be a beauty. Yeah, well, our owner is a guy named Randy Boyd. He's the best, and Randy is the biggest Smokies fan, like literally the biggest Smokies fan. Like, he loves the Smokies. He wanted to buy the team. The Haslams, who owned the Browns, sold the team when they bought the Browns, and Randy got him, and it was like a kid in the candy store. First thing he says to me is, I want to go have beers, and I want you to tell me all about the team, and let's just do this, We are expecting a pretty cool ring. I'll just put it like that, just because I think he's going to want a pretty cool ring, and I think we all want one too. So I'm looking for it. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be as giant as some of those Cubs rings, but I'm guessing that this one's going to be pretty cool. Well, Mick, I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations to you, the organization, everyone from the owner on down to Cheddar Bob. There are, again, behind the scenes, there's a lot of people working to make this happen. And for everybody, I hope, 48 years, the wait is over. You are no longer the Chokies. You are the champions, and congratulations, Mick. Yeah. Hey, and again, I know that this is on in Chicago, and, I just can't thank, the Jed Hoyers and the Carter Hawkins and the, and Jared Banner's enough just for giving us the players, to put those guys in to where we actually had like a legitimate rotation, and we had a great bullpen, and we had a lineup that just was kicking ass. Thank you guys. We appreciate it. Go Cubs. Go Cubs. Take care.
All right, Crawly, great job with our guy, Mick Gillispie. This is Season 2, Episode 75 of the Cubs Fly the W670 podcast. Rest in peace, Cubs 2023. Before we move any farther, let's take a look at those final standings.
Yep, this is how it's going to end up with the Cubs, with Milwaukee in first place, clinching 92-70. The Cubs second place, 83-79. They were able to hold off the Reds 82-80. Pittsburgh in fourth place at 76-88. And look at the lowly Cardinals all alone in the basement, 71-91. How's that better organization working out for you, Wilson?
20 games under 500. Wow, 20 games.
Well, when you talk about over and under 500, you know, the basic rule of thumb is be at least 10 games over at home and be about 500 on the road. And if you look at the Cubs this year, they were 45-36 at home, about 9 games over 500, which is okay. I would have liked 10, but on the road, they were 38-42, 4 games under 500. So if you would have just played 500 ball on the road, then that's the difference between the postseason and not making it. But when we look here too at the month by month, you know, when you talk about March and April, which, you know, one game in March, 14-13, a little bit over 500. May was a disaster at 10-18. And then in June, they're 14-11. And then we had some fun this summer, Dustin. 15-11 in July, 18-9 in August. But they finished 12-17 in September, October. So the run differential is something that you were kind of alluding to earlier, is that they had a plus 96 run differential. I mean, that is a ridiculously high number that you have, because run differential is the amount of runs you score versus the amount of runs scored against you. And so obviously, if you score more runs than are scored against you, you should be doing better. So their expected win-loss record this year was actually 90-72. But like you said, there's a lot of games where they scored maybe 15, even 20 runs, and other games where they couldn't score at all or left a ton of guys on base, and that came back to haunt them.
Yep, absolutely. Again, it's not how many runs you score. It definitely matters that you're scoring, but it's when you're scoring those runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dustin, you know, we finished the first segment up talking about how it's going to look next year, 2024. And there are 4 big questions that the Cubs face this offseason. And, you know, I tried to put them in order of importance in my head. I'm sure most Cub fans would probably agree with this right here. But, you know, number 1, first and foremost, Dustin, has to be Cody Bellinger. Does he resign with the Cubs?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, he had a great offensive year overall. But there was that one stat, that one glaring stat that somebody, maybe Jesse Rogers, put it out there, but he and Dansby Swanson, not exactly great in the clutch.
You know, I think a lot of that would be something that was affected in September, especially for Bellinger. I'm just telling you, if there was a game on the line, Bellinger and Nico Horner were the 2 guys that I trusted most. Here's what Cody Bellinger had to say, talking about moving forward with the Cubs.
For me, I really tried to enjoy these last few weeks. Obviously, there's no prediction of the future in anything, so I really just enjoyed my time with this group of guys, with this coaching staff. You know, playing for the Cubs organization in Wrigley Field was really special. And, you know, these last 2 weeks, I really just tried to embrace it, have fun with these group of guys, and obviously try and help this team win.
So, Dustin, you know that Cub fans are already in a bad mental state right now. You heard when you hear Dan's or when you hear Cody there, it sounds like, you know, he's using past tense and everybody's freaking out.
Was 2 times, was in the same sentence. Really trying to enjoy my final times with these guys, right? Yeah.
Right.
You can read into it. You can read into it. But remember, this guy's a baseball player, okay? He's a baseball player. That's what he does for a living. He's a baseball player. So let's not get crazy, but I understand the was sets off the alarms.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when we talk about Bellinger, you know, the Cubs signed him to a 1-year, $17.5 million contract, and it couldn't have gone any better. He slashed 307, 356, 525. He was at the top of nearly every offensive category for the Cubs. He was second in runs, second in hits, third in doubles, tied for first in home runs with Morel, first in RBIs, Dustin, average, OBP, slugging, and OPS. He's a shoo-in for comeback player of the year. I'm going to say a lock on that. And when you think about it, now his agent Scott Boras is going to look to cash in. You know, this is an opportunity for, you know, there's people that question. I mean, he was basically just let go from the Dodgers. Have a good one. We're not going to tender you. And the Cubs jumped in on that. And, we were excited, but we had no idea that it was going to be this good. Can you imagine this Cubs team or this Cubs team going forward without Bellinger?
No, I can't imagine what it would look like without Bellinger. And that's the big thing. If you take him out, he missed some time, right? He missed some time, and we saw things weren't very good when he wasn't around. He was definitely the old straw that stirs the drink, if you will.
Yeah, and the Cubs lucked out, and Mike Tauchman, who didn't even break with the team, ended up having a really good summer. He came down to earth in fall, but that kind of helped to ease that a little bit. And then when you were able to put Bellinger and Tauchman in together, it filled two holes in center field and first base that the Cubs had all year. But as far as Belly is concerned, Dustin, the question we got to ask now is, how far would you be willing to go in terms of dollars and years?
Right, that's going to be the thing, and you got to, who's your competition, right? Who are you bidding against? Everybody's assuming that the Yankees are going to be highly interested in his services. And then the next part is, okay, if he was to leave, how are you replacing him? PCA is not the replacement right now. PCA is not nearly good enough on the offensive side of things. The Candyman, not enough there to be a replacement for him. I could be okay with the Candyman coming back as long as you're also giving me Bellinger as well. Your guy, Canario, Canario PCA combo, does that fill the void? I don't think so. It's not good enough. And this division that the Cubs play in is winnable. And based on what the Cubs did last year, I think when you take a guy like Cody Bellinger away, I think that makes the team take a step back. Again, now tell me that they got Shohei Ohtani, right? Tell me that they got Shohei Ohtani. I might have a different tune. But based on what I'm seeing quickly looking around at the free agent market, as far as hitters, everyday players go, market's not that great.
And you're taking a look at the idea of, again, not to diminish anything Bellinger has done, and maybe what's happened is right. Maybe he was injured. Maybe, he got healthy and it worked with the Cubs. But we're talking about, one season. Are you willing to go 6 years, $300 million, and then it risk all of a sudden he comes back down to earth? And now you're stuck with that contract. I mean, how long? God, I can only imagine, Dustin, how many phone calls you took about Jason Hayward for the length of that contract. So remember, when you're going all in, once that happens, that guy's not coming out of the lineup. He's not sitting on the bench. So, I hope they're 100% certain that this guy's for real if they're going to go for that big money, because Scott Boras is not going for a hometown discount. Scott Boras is going to want maximum dollars for his client. And you got two big sharks in the New York Yankees and the San Francisco Giants that were interested in him before he signed with the Cubs. After what happened to the Giants this year, you see they fired Gabe Kapler. You saw what happened there. You saw the Yankees, what a disaster they've had. Both teams are going to look to make a splash.
Yeah, both will be competing with the Cubs. There's no doubt about that. So this is a topic, Crawly, that's not going away anytime soon. All right, does Marcus Stroman opt out of his contract?
This was a audio clip that I picked, right when all the talk about him opting out came out. This is what Stroman had to say about him and Belly.
For me,
Cubs to trade Bellinger or to trade you for the stretcher. How much do you hope your play and the team's play kind of solves that problem for the Cubs and they want you here for the stretch run?
Yeah, I would love to be here long term, Everyone's always putting this emphasis on, we need to play good in 7 days, 10 days, and then we could be buyers. But I actually don't believe in that. This division's wide open. And then if you even look deeper than that, as an organization, why would you not want to be competitive for multiple years, year after year after year? Belly's a guy who changes your lineup. He's a guy who, why would you want him to get away? Why would you want a guy like myself who goes out there and gives you quality starts in a league that's incredibly hard to do? You know what I mean? It's incredibly hard to say, we're going to get this production out of this young guy, or we're going to get this. But it's hard, and I know Belly wants to stay. You know what I mean? I know I would love to stay here, but a lot of that's out of our control. So at the end of the day, it's a business, so we have to treat it as such. Even though we have this love for this fan base and this organization, it's hard to kind of separate it at times. But yeah, I love being a Cub. I love everything about it. But, someone who's been through it before, it's something you kind of have to distance yourself a bit because a lot of it's out of your control. And no matter how much I love it, I can wake up tomorrow and be gone. So it's tough, but love everything about the city of Chicago and this organization. And no matter what happens, I would hope that they would be in the mix in the offseason when it comes to my free agency.
In December 2021, Stroman signs a 3-year, $71 million contract with the Cubs. Stroman has a player option for the final year, which would be next year, which is triggered, would pay him a guaranteed $21 million. Dustin, through his first 16 starts this season, he logged a 2.28 ERA, a 1.029 WHIP across 98.2 innings. He was named to the All-Star game for the second time in his career, and he was in the Cy Young conversation. And that's where this clip was right around that time about, was he going to opt out? Was he going to test free agency? All of that stuff. But then the Cubs went to London and Stroman left that game with a blister injury. From that date, from June 25th, Stroman posted a 9 ERA, a 1.933 WHIP over 30 innings and pitched and 7 starts. Stroman just had one quality start over the last 2.5 months. And in 4 of his last 7 starts during that time, he failed to make it through the 4th inning. He went on the IL in August and for August and half of September before coming off the IL in mid-September. And he had 2 appearances out of the pen when he came out on September 15th. Looked okay. Started September 23rd against the Rockies, where he went 3 innings, and September 28th against the Braves, where he lasted 2 innings, giving up a combined 7 runs in 5 innings of work. Any chance he opts out, or is Stroh staying with the Cubs?
I can't imagine he would opt out. I don't think anybody wants him at that kind of a number. I think it would take him probably 3 years to make that kind of money somewhere else. So I would think that he's back with the Cubs for sure. I'm not sure that the Cubs want him back, especially at that price, but that's the contract he signed.
Yeah, and again, we saw what he can do. And so the question ends up being is that if Stroman – if it's his contract, if it's his walk year, he's going to be motivated. I think he's always motivated. But again, how those guys, when you're looking at another contract, he's going to try to give it 110%. But, again, through my interactions with Stroh that I had the last couple of years he's been here, he's a guy that works very hard on his body, on his mind. I mean, when you think about being a 5'8" pitcher, you know what I mean? And being able to make it in the major leagues, that guy does have a lot of heart. And if he could stay healthy, we saw what he could do. But that's going to be the issue is can he stay healthy?
Speaking of staying healthy, do the Cubs exercise their team option for Kyle Hendricks? It's $16.5 million.
Yeah, here's what Hendo had to say after his last start.
When you're in the thick of a race, that's where all your focus is going into. So it's going to take some time to sit back and reflect on it all. It happens quick, when it ends that abruptly. So, yeah, sit down, reflect. I'm just happy that I was able to come back, be healthy again, and get back to being myself. And so I know I got a lot of years ahead of me. I just love playing baseball, so that's where my focus is. Just keep going as long as I can. I have full trust in whatever's supposed to happen will happen. Obviously, I love it so much in Chicago. Been my whole career playing in front of the best fans in the world, going out in Wrigley Field, all the time. So I wouldn't want to trade that for anything. And they're well aware of that. And like I said, if it works for both sides, that'd be great, obviously, to be back.
So when Kyle Hendricks was put on the IL and got surgery on July 5th, 2022, a lot of us wondered it was at the end of Kyle's career, right? The guy's 33. He was coming off his 2 worst season. He had very little margin for error, right? He has a fastball that barely touches 90 miles an hour. And when he came back to make his first start on May 25th this season, it came at a very important time. Jamison Tyone was awful. Drew Smiley's struggles were just beginning, and Hayden Wesniewski couldn't cut it. He finished, Dustin, with a 6-8 record with a 3.74 ERA, but he consistently gave them an opportunity to win his starts. I looked at the stats, Dustin. Kyle started 24 games for the Cubs. Out of those 24 games, he gave up more than 3 runs only 4 times. Okay. So again, that's what you're going to get out of Kyle Hendricks. He's going to go 5-6. He's going to give up 2-3 runs, and that's what you got. And there's value in that. But
you can stay healthy, make 25 starts as a 4th or 5th guy. I think it's worth it.
Right. And that's what the Cubs have to do. And so, I know that there's questions now because, I think if Stroman opted out, there was no question that the Cubs would pick that up. But now you have, if you're looking at the rotation, we got, Justin Steele, right?
You got Steele. You got Steele and Tyone for sure, right? That's
Steele and Tyone for 2. Though that's 2
for sure. That's locked in, right?
Now
Then you got a bunch of guys, right? You got Wicks, Assad, Wisniewski. You know, those are other guys. You got some younger guys, maybe. But again, this team's talking about actually playing in October. I don't think it's time for some of the names like Ben Brown and Cade Horton, at least not in the starting rotation.
I mean, you're talking about 3 spots are already pretty much taken in. It's just a question of the 4th and 5th spot. And so,
and are they buying a pitcher? You know, if they let Bellinger, if Bellinger walks out the door, they're using the Bellinger money on a pitcher.
Right. And like, you know, and like you mentioned some of the names, you had Wicks, you had Assad, Wisniewski and Killian. Again, we saw them this season. And just because a guy struggles at first doesn't mean that they're going to struggle next year. You don't know. That's the difficulty in kind of trying to assess these type of things, because I remember Greg Maddux struggled when he first came up. I'm not comparing any of these guys to Greg Maddux. I'm just saying it happens. It's very rare. It's much more rare that a guy comes up from the big leagues and lights the world on fire. Usually it's a big adjustment. And that's where you talk about having stronger 1 through 3 guys to be able to absorb, you know, guys that have learning curves, you know what I mean? And I don't think you or I either, you know, before the World Baseball Classic, I don't think either of us thought Javier Assad was going to do as well as he did. And look what he did. You never know.
You never know. All right. Question number 4. I understand why we're asking it, but I think it was answered yesterday on the Marquee Sports Network. Is David Ross the skipper in 24?
Well, you know, yeah, we're gonna have that interview with Tom Ricketts on the next episode coming out on Friday. But here's what Ross had to say after the season was over.
Well, we didn't win enough ball games. I mean, like, we can point fingers and blame. You know, I don't think it's just that's we got to look inward and see where we got to improve. You know, it's on each one of us to grow this year. It doesn't feel like it right now. There's a lot to be proud of from a lot of different guys, and also the area to get better. We got to get better in so many areas. So it's a great thing about a baseball season. We're going to have to come back next year and be tested all over again and have to improve on a lot of areas. But right now, just disappointment. I think we can all feel that. We can all soak that in, remember how that feels, use that this offseason to get better, continue to grow, and come back next year and take another step forward.
Yes, take another step forward. That's what I like to hear. Take another step forward.
So as we talked about, the Cubs finished with a record of 83-79, their first winning season since 2020. That being said, on September 6th, after sweeping the Giants, the Cubs had a 92% chance to make the postseason and blew it. This is going to go down, Dustin, as one of the all-time great collapses in Cubs history. They played 7 series after that Giants series and won only 1 against the Rockies. They went 7-15 in that stretch, with 3 of those 7 victories being against the lowly Rockies. So let's look at numbers. Ross and the Cubs agreed to a 3-year contract extension prior to the 2022 season. So his deal runs through the conclusion of 2024 with a club option for 2025. So the Cubs are in no hurry. Like I said, they don't have to let him go. He's under contract, and then they have an option to keep him in 2025. But Dustin, I'll never forget when I heard that Ricky Renteria was fired after the 2014 season, when we saw a lot of improvement from that team. And the reason Ricky Renteria got fired was because an opportunity out of a total fluke in his contract. Joe Madden became a free agent when Andrew Friedman went over.
I don't see a Joe Madden out there. I mean, listen, Craig Counsell's going to the Mets. Okay, Craig Counsell will be the Mets manager next year. There's no doubt in my mind. Craig Counsell will be the manager of the New York Mets next year. So, and I don't like that guy anyway. That's another story.
You know what I like, Dustin? I like popping champagne. And all I see with Craig Counsell is that guy seems to have goggles on his face every September. So
Craig Timber, I've heard all about it. Let me know when Craig Tober starts, okay? A lot of Craig Timber, Crawly. I don't know a lot about a Craig Tober. We'll see.
You know as much as I do that the postseason is a crapshoot, and again, imagine if Craig Counsell had actual payroll to work with instead of using duct tape and whatever else he can to keep things going.
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out when he's the manager of the Mets next year, Crawly.
All right. Well, Gabe Kapler and Buck Showalter are a couple names that are out there. I mean, I think we could
go Buck Showalter. Then go ahead and get Girardi out of the marquee booth. Okay, same guy in my opinion, same type of guy. And Gabe Kapler, I mean, what's he going to do? Run Clark Street? I mean, he doesn't do anything for me.
Well, the Cubs aren't making the postseason, but you know who is? A lot of other teams. And so we were going to take a look here, Dustin, and make our predictions since we can't predict the Cubs next series. So here we are right here. You want to go NL or
now,
AL?
Are we just predicting the wild card round, or are we
just the wild card round? Nothing more. Wild card round.
All right. I mean, I'm against. I don't want to be wrong, so I'm going to go with Craig Timber to move a little bit into Craig Tober. They will take care of the D-backs, even though I'm going to cheer for the D-backs. And I think the Phillies are going to squash the Fish.
Yeah, boy, I think the Phillies easily have it. I think that's going to be one heck of a series, Milwaukee versus Arizona. To me, it's a coin flip. I hate to be a hypocrite, but yeah, I'll go with Milwaukee kind of moving on.
You better go with Milwaukee.
But you know, what about it on the AL side where we got the Twins versus the Blue Jays? Who you got there?
I got a friend that's a big Blue Jay fan up in Ottawa, so I'll go Blue Jays. Twins, you know, talk about a team that like backs in, you know, the worst division in baseball by far. So I'm going to go with the Blue Jays in that one. How about you?
I'm with you on the Blue Jays. That AL Central's crap, and the Twins just show they just don't play well against better teams. I think the Blue Jays easily move on.
So, and then I'm just going to say that the Rangers are just going to outscore Tampa Bay. I think I like Tampa Bay. You know, they're always that team with the, you know, duct tape and minimal payroll. But I just think at the end of the day, I think the Rangers are going to outscore. But I think that's one that'll be 3-game series. It'll be really tough.
I think the Rangers move on, and that is going. And I guess for me, I'm in the back of my head. I know it's a very big rivalry in the AL, but Texas and the Blue Jays have some history. That would be fun. So I hope both of those teams advance, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But I think I wanted to ask you, Dustin, this is the second year that we have the postseason like this. Are you kind of getting to like it, or?
Oh yeah, I like it. Yeah, no, I like it because you get more teams involved, and it's not one and done. I mean, I don't mind the one and done if you're the team that wins the one, but if you're a team that wins the one and done and loses that done, if you're done after one, I think you want the best out of 3.
Yep, I think I like it too, and I think it was a fun postseason race, even though it didn't come out in the Cubs' favor.
Yeah, well, that's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow us on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the whole thing. Also, you can email us, flythew670@gmail.com. You can also watch us on YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, for any of the listeners that get this bright and early tomorrow, Jed Hoyer talking midday tomorrow. So when we get back at the end of the week, we'll be talking about what Jed had to say on Tuesday.
Absolutely. And there's always going to be news breaking. And guess what? I don't care about the Bulls. I don't care about the Hawks. I don't care about the Bears. I live, eat, breathe Chicago Cubs. So trust me, this podcast is going to keep going throughout the offseason. We're here for all your breaking news and good stories and some great guests that are getting lined up. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!